From MTN News, this is Montana This Morning.
Good morning and welcome to Montana This Morning on this Monday, February 5th. I'm Diane Parker in for Augusta McDonald. This morning, Yellowstone County authorities continue investigating the discovery of a woman's body found near the railroad tracks outside Laurel. Law enforcement was at the scene well into the night last night off Highway 10 East around Sites Ronan Road. Sheriff Mike Linder says detectives are in the early stages of the investigation and it's too early to determine a cause of death. Also in Laurel, police are seeking the public's health and finding 28-year-old Cassie McCauley. She was last heard from February 1st and has some health issues, leaving family and friends concerned. Cassie has blue eyes with sandy brown hair and is 5 foot 4 inches tall. Laurel police say she was last seen walking in Laurel. If you have any information on where she could be, you're asked to call Laurel Police. Here in Billings, a man is dead after driving a pickup truck off the rims around 3:30 yesterday morning. The deceased driver was being chased by police officers, telling us he was a person of interest in a previous incident. Authorities say the 30-year-old was heading east on Highway 3 when he turned sharply, driving off the rims at a high rate of speed. The vehicle landed dangerously close to houses in the 1100 block of Rimrock Road. The crash remains under investigation. All right, Miller joining us this Monday morning and a little bit foggy out there.
Yeah, that's a big story this morning as we wake up. It's very foggy across the area. Let's take the latest shot here of what we're looking at in terms of visibility. You can see down to a quarter of a mile here in Billings. Worse than that, half a mile down in Sheridan when we've got reports of some freezing fog. That means the road's not only going to be slick, but very icy there, down to a half a mile in Miles City. So it is expanded, the dense fog advisory across the area. Now you can see we've got it from Treasure to northern Stillwater, here across Yellowstone, down in the southern Bighorns, Rosebud County, southern parts there, Sheridan foothills until about 11 a.m. this morning. So during your commute, please do be careful. You can see a great shot down into here in Billings, courtesy of the Stockman Lake weather cam, where the fog is rather thick. Temperature wise, we're milder than normal. We should be around 19. We're at 34 right now at the airport, but it feels like 37. Winds out the southeast at about 9 miles an hour. 20s and 30s as we wake up this morning. We've got some fog, we've got some clouds, even maybe a little bit of snow trying to come into Billings this morning. And then as we go along today, we're looking at highs in the 40s and 50s under partly cloudy skies. Another day tomorrow is going to be warmer than average, and then we have another winter storm coming in, and confidence is starting to grow a little bit that this one may have more of an impact. A couple of inches of snow possible for the area. We'll take a look at that coming up here in just a bit.
Okay, we'll be waiting for that. Thanks a lot, Miller. Right. A Billings woman is working hard to keep local kids from a life of crime and addiction. Jennifer Devereaux spent years in prison, turned her life around, and is using her story to help others. Q2's Haley Monaco has more.
In her late 20s, Jennifer Devereaux was serving 3.5 years for her first prison sentence. A few years after being released, Devereaux found herself struggling with addiction again, arrested and sentenced to 20 years in prison.
It was so emotional because I really didn't think I had a chance.
But 15 years into her sentence, a new law passed, giving Jennifer Devereaux some hope.
The First Step Act is just probably the best thing that has happened in legislation, for, people who have drug offenses.
The First Step Act is a criminal justice reform law passed in 2018, designed to promote rehabilitation and reduce the size of the federal prison population.
To get back into court on our own and argue our own case, our own reason to get out, which is under a compassionate release, and that's how I won. And it was for sentencing disparity.
After serving 18 years for intent to distribute methamphetamine in March of 2023, Devereaux used the law to become a free woman, a feeling she remembers well.
My heart was just bursting. I was like, man, I'm gonna be free. I'm gonna be able to see my family, be able to be with my dad.
While catching up on lost time with family, Devereaux also recently spent some time in Washington, D.C., speaking with congressional lawmakers about the impacts the legislation has on people's lives.
It makes me feel a little emotional, but it's just a way for me to be able to maybe make up for the past, everything that I've done, everything, the life that I lived, and just be able to give back in some way.
Giving back by advocating for reform and speaking with teens about avoiding a fate similar to hers.
I want to help younger kids before they get to, because that's where it all started for me. When I was younger, teenager, I wish somebody would have stepped in for me. So that's what I want to do. I want to, especially the younger girls. I have a heart for the younger girls.
In Billings, Haley Monaco, MTN News.
Happening overnight, the Senate released its highly anticipated bipartisan immigration bill. The $118 billion package pairs border enforcement with aid for Ukraine and Israel, among other items. Despite the bill offering up some tougher border security measures, including presidential power to shut down the border, election year politics may kill the bill. President Joe Biden is urging Congress to get it to his desk, but former President Donald Trump is urging his party to reject it. Meanwhile, former President Trump is getting ready for another major court event on the calendar this week. On Thursday, justices at the Supreme Court will take up his appeal to be on the Colorado ballot. Our Joe St. George has more on this and some of the other upcoming trials involving Trump.
All campaigns have sides, and most have debates, but 2024 was expected to be different because of something that has never happened before, a trial involving one of the leading candidates for president. But there are major questions if those events will still occur. Take, for instance, March 4th, about a month from now. It was supposed to be the start of former President Donald Trump's blockbuster January 6th trial, a defining moment in the 2024 election. But that is not happening on time anymore. A judge last week ordering it unable to go forward. There is no new start date scheduled. One reason, a separate case involving presidential immunity. The former president and his lawyers have been arguing in court that he shouldn't be charged with crimes because they believe presidents are immune from prosecution. That question is currently waiting a ruling by the appeals court in D.C., although it's likely the Supreme Court eventually takes up the case too and then issues their own opinion. But all of this appealing takes time, and Election Day keeps getting closer. Legal analysts have said that it's much easier for a federal judge to start a trial involving the former president in March as opposed to a few weeks before Election Day, assuming former President Trump is the Republican nominee. The Justice Department has historically not wanted to influence elections. Ty Cobb is a former member of Mr. Trump's legal team and joined us recently on Scripps News. Are we going to have any trials actually happen this year?
Any continuing delay does make it less likely that the case would get tried in advance of the election.
One place where a trial does look more likely to start soon is in New York City, where the local Manhattan District Attorney's case involving Mr. Trump is scheduled for late March. Because that case is at the local level and involves campaign spending allegations before former President Trump was in office, the presidential immunity question is not as relevant. One thing is clear, all of these legal cases involving former President Donald Trump is not just taking time, it's also costing money. Recent FEC filings report that various political action committees involving former President Trump spent over $50 million last year on legal fees. Joe St. George, Scripps News, Washington.
Health experts expect cancer cases to surge in the coming decades. The World Health Organization released a new report suggesting cancer cases could increase 77% by the year 2050. The organization predicts there will be 35 million new cancer cases diagnosed that year. The prediction considers population aging and growth. It also considers exposure to factors like tobacco, alcohol, and obesity. Top White House leadership says there will be more attacks on Iran-backed militia groups in the Middle East, saying strikes over the weekend were the beginning, not the end of U.S. retaliation. This comes after a drone attack killed 3 American soldiers in Jordan. CBS's Naomi Ruckham explains the challenge in avoiding a full-fledged conflict with Iran.
The U.S. says there are no plans to scale back its response against Iranian-backed militia groups after carrying out a series of airstrikes along with the U.K. over the weekend, targeting Houthi rebels in Yemen. This following other airstrikes in Iraq and Syria.
What happened on Friday was the beginning, not the end of our response.
But the U.S. is walking a fine line, careful to avoid hitting any targets inside Iranian territory.
We don't want to go to war with Iran. That, by the way, is an objective that Iran shares. They don't want to go to war with us.
The The escalation comes amid Republican criticism that the Biden administration waited too long to respond to the initial drone strike on a U.S. base in Jordan that killed 3 American soldiers.
You want to do this in a deliberate way. You want to do it. You want to carefully select your targets. You want to make sure that that all the parameters are in place to have good effect.
They keep saying that they want to, retaliate, but then they say it's about deterrence. Then they say it's about diminishing capabilities. Those are all different goals and objectives, and they're not doing any of those.
All this as Secretary of State Antony Blinken is traveling to the region this week for a series of diplomatic meetings. Blinken has planned stops in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Egypt, Israel, and the West Bank. Naomi Ruckham, CBS News.
Houthi attacks in the Red Sea have also had a drastic impact on international shipping, pushing oil prices higher. IKEA says the conflict could lead to product shortages, and Carnival Cruises announced it's rerouting 12 ships to avoid that region. Business was booming for RV dealerships during the pandemic, but sales are now slowing. In 2021, RVs were flying off the lots, but in 2023, they stayed parked. Sales down 92% compared to that record year. Local dealers tell us the numbers aren't cause for concern. They tell us the pandemic seriously increased the desire for outdoor recreation. Now things are simply back to normal.
The pandemic did spark a lot more buying action from the consumer, but now it's coming back to more of the 2018, 2019 numbers rather than the crazy numbers in 2020 through 2022.
And just because folks aren't buying RVs as frequently, it doesn't mean there isn't a desire to camp. KOA tells us 57% of their campers have already booked a trip for this year. Facebook turned 20 yesterday, meaning an entire generation of young people have never known a life without it or the social media explosion that followed. This morning, CBS's Christine Lazar looks at how a digital yearbook turned into a cultural phenomenon.
Back up, guys, back up. When Mark Zuckerberg launched Facebook as a Harvard undergrad on February 4th, 2004, he did it with a $1,000 personal investment and the goal of creating a digital yearbook.
What's important to remember about Facebook is for the first 5 years, there was no like button.
CNET's senior consumer tech reporter Nick Wolny says adding that like button proved to be a game changer.
You saw more of a desire to post popular content, to post things that would be popular. And it ultimately just began to change and even shape the American psyche.
With advertisers lining up in droves, Facebook grew, purchasing Instagram, launching Messenger, even becoming a political player.
Well, definitely the 2016 election was a turning point. It saw examples of political influence on a much larger scale. You also saw examples of other countries asserting influence on an American election.
Zuckerberg has been a fixture on Capitol Hill, called to testify about everything from election interference to privacy issues, and most recently, child sexual exploitation on social media.
Would you like now to apologize to the victims who have been harmed by your project?
No one should have to go through the things that your families have suffered.
In 2021, Facebook changed its name to Meta with the hopes of building a new digital world.
Over time, I hope that we are seen as a metaverse company.
Those plans faltered, with the metaverse concept losing billions. Still, Facebook's legacy and Meta's impact endures.
Do you think that without Facebook's success, we would have as many social media platforms as we do today?
Absolutely not. What they have over all the other platforms is that they did it first and that they're doing it on a very large scale.
More than 3 billion people use at least one Meta product daily. Christine Lazar, CBS News, Los Angeles.